Historical Society on BC-TV is supported in part by the Highlands at Wyomissing.
And welcome to the monthly program of the Historical Society of Berks County. I'm your host, George M. Miser IX, President of the Historical Society of Berks County and publisher of the Historical Review of Berks County, the Society's quarterly magazine in print continuously since October of 1935. Not incidentally, most back issues of the Historical Review are available from the late 1930s up to the present time. It should be noted that this program is telecast live on the first Wednesday of each month at 7. It repeats this Friday at 10, Saturday at 6, and Sunday morning at 9 a.m. Welcome all to the August 6, 2008 program. Seated beside me is Joshua K. Blay, the Historical Society of Berks County's Curator of Collections and Associate Director.
Good evening, George.
Good evening. Beside him is Simon B. Bertlett, the Society's Executive Director.
Good evening, George.
Good evening.
The Society's Museum, Library, Gift Shop, and temporary exhibit on the 175th anniversary of the Reading Railroad are open Tuesday through Saturday, 9 to 4. Our gift shop is fully stocked with Reading and Berks histories by a variety of present-day and old-time authors. A number of unusual pottery pieces made by Lester Breiniger and other local potters are now in stock. Remember, the Historical Society's gift shop has a large inventory of Reading and Berks County histories, new and pre-owned.
We remind viewers that for $30,
$40.
For $40, you can be one of us, a member of the Historical Society of Berks County. Membership in the Society includes our prize-winning quarterly magazine, the Historical Review of Berks County. Membership includes unlimited use of the museum and library. Incidentally, family memberships, all living in the same house, are only $50 a year.
And while we're on the subject of memberships, we remind you that Berks Community Television, BC-TV, now observing its 31st anniversary, is a survivor and a tough venue and a unique entity in that it's interactive. You are encouraged to call with your questions and comments.
And we should comment that the phone number is 378-0426. Why not salute BC-TV for all the great shows it provides to Reading and Berks and send a check for $30 for a year's membership. Mail your check to BC-TV, 645 Penn Street, Reading, Pennsylvania, 19601. Remember, time passes, but operating expenses never go away.
Right now, George, I'd like to say a few things. It's that time of year again, and George has been hard at work on the Passing Scene Volume 16. It's hard to believe, but there have been 26 years since George and Gloria began working on the Passing Scene, and we're into Volume 16, and it's being prepared by George as we speak, and should be ready for distribution the latter part of November. We are going to be, when we have a definite delivery date, we are going to be planning the autograph parties that are so much fun at the Historical Society, and we'll keep you posted as to when those are going to be. But as in all cases with the Passing Scene, it's, as in previous editions, the Passing Scene, for those of you who are not familiar with it, it's a hardbound volume, 272 pages printed on high-gloss 80-pound stock. The book features over 350 illustrations, many then and now photographs, dealing with the subjects on Berks County. And they are really widely varied. George has a section on Carsonia Park. He also has a section in this volume on the Gravity Railroad. And the one that I'm most interested in is the section that he has on the Tulpehocken Crab Man. And that's not to be confused with the Crab Man that stars on NBC's TV sitcom My Name is Earl. This is a whole different character. But it's going to be a great-ish volume. I've seen some of the preliminary work George has done, and it's going to be very exciting. You know, while printing costs, like everything else today, have increased, the Passing Scene remains the same. Passing Scenes are $45. You can pre-reserve them now by calling the Historical Society at 610-375-4375. Ask for Gloria Miser, and she will make sure that you have a volume reserved for you. Again, we'll give you more information when the autograph signing party is, and that should be a really good time. As you know, or may not know, that the generosity of George and Gloria is great, and all the proceeds from the Passing Scene series go directly to the Historical Society of Berks County and our many youth education programs and outreach programs that we provide to the citizens of Greater Reading and Berks County. So I encourage all of you to keep your collection of Passing Scenes up to date and purchase the next volume of the Passing Scene, Volume 16.
Okay, thank you, Simon. As Simon said, pre-orders are now being taken, and this will be a limited edition of 2,500 and will be a one-time only printing. So those of you who would like a copy of the Passing Scene 16, do act without delay, because there will be no reprints. The people who waited in years gone by for various issues are now finding that when you go on eBay and you try to fill in like volume 7, 8, 9, some have been going very recently. One went for $202, another one went for $282, and someone called the society very recently complaining that he would like to get 3 or 4 that are missing. He went to a public sale. Where it was, I don't know. It happened when I was out of town, but the books went for $300 a volume. And he decided that he would try to wait and get them some other way. So if you're interested in completing your collection, filling in, don't hesitate, because it'll be a one-time printing. There will not be second editions. This is a one-time edition.
They're really hard to track down. I'm still trying to get a full set for my office once the library moves. Even I'm missing some volumes that I worked the historical
and you have them in.
Yeah, right.
I know. It still doesn't help.
Anyhow, we're excited to announce that there's a special, it'll probably be a 105-page section, will be featured that contains fun and facts and lots of illustrations about 25 prominent Berks County towns and villages. Each village and town sketch lists the prominent people who lived and worked there in the late 1930s. More specifically, most of these were prepared during the winter of 1939. Listed are the names of the butcher, the barber, the baker, the postmaster, restaurant operator, craftsman, mechanics, the local miller, store and hotel proprietors, that sort of thing. Hundreds of people are included in the special section, and I brought a few things along tonight to share with you. That's one of them. Okay, keep an eye on that while I read this. Hundreds of people are included in this special section, which highlights the towns and villages of Alleghenyville, Amityville, Bally, Burnville, Bethel, Blandon, Centerport, Fritztown, and that also includes Montello and Weitzelville, Geigertown, Huff's Church, Lenhartsville, Mertztown, Millersburg, Moulton, Mooresville, Morgantown, Mount Pleasant, Pleasantville, New Jerusalem, Pine Forge, Pricetown, Stonersville, Stroudsburg, Strausstown, Virginville, and Westnersville, now generally known as Stony Run.
As George said, there are about 25 towns and villages that are discussed in detail. 25 viewers who grew up in any of the aforementioned places, especially in the 1930s and the 1940s, will find some familiar names and faces. More than likely, many will find references to relatives, friends, and people they'll remember from their childhood. As you can see, here's some more examples of the illustrations that will appear. We'll have some more next month. Can't show it all in one episode.
Can we get back to that Amityville? I'm going to comment about Amityville. I think that's possible. While he's checking, Amityville, this gives you a little flavor of how each of the stories or how each of the towns might be handled. Subheaded, best known to Berks as a market town. Until this winter, 1939, it had a factory, Amityville. Amityville is a town where the most frequent change of expression is a wink, where the commonest shout is a series of numbers, and where the population on Friday afternoons is very great. Its winkers are bidders, its shouters are auctioneers, and its Friday crowds attend the renowned sales of farmers' produce and supplies held weekly in the yard of George Fry's Washington House. Some of you will remember George Fry's Washington House as Ken Nichols' Amityville Hotel. Do you remember that one sign?
No, Ken Nichols.
Ken Nichols. They used to have big ads, signs all over the area of a cat playing a violin.
Oh, yeah. That's been a long time ago.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
Ken Nichols.
I date myself on that one.
Yeah, right. Only factory moves, subheading. Until this winter, that was 1939, there was one factory in Amityville. It made overalls. Now it makes them in Boyertown. The other little shops of the town died out with their owners. Wellington de Turk used to weave rugs. The clack of his loom could be heard up and down the main street, for he wove very tightly, driving the weft home hard. John Wagoner was a cabinet maker in Amityville. One of his fine walnut desks can be seen in the room which Eli Ludwig, related to Tad by the way, calls, with a twinkle, my kitchen and office. Lyman Ruth used to have a tinsmith shop in town next door to the Amity Township Museum. That Township Museum would be almost across from the General Store building in Amity. I guess it's Boyer Store today in Amityville.
Oh.
It's now gone. Now the spot is marked only by a hollow in the ground. Well, that was gone by 1939 already, under the hickory trees which Nathaniel Bertlet planted when he noticed how scarce picnic groves were becoming in the neighborhood. Gives you an idea of typically. I'm going to take a minute to switch subjects. As most of you know, I'm sure, who are watching this program, we lost our former president of the Historical Society for 32 years, Terry Connor, passed away within the last 10 days. And this coming Friday in the afternoon, there will be a memorial service for Terry at Albright College, where he attended as a young fellow and where he served on the Board of Trustees for a long, long time. In point of fact, he lived right amidst some of the buildings there at Albright College. At his funeral, at his actual funeral, the group took a detour from St. Paul's on Perkiomen Avenue, went up over the mountain. Everyone wondered, what in the world are they doing? Because the whole procession to the cemetery went up the mountain, past the pagoda, and down past and through Albright College to the burial site in Charles Evans Cemetery. It was really very, very impressive. And so this coming Friday will be a memorial service for Terry Connor. In his memory, by the way, we do have a tree, and on our grounds, and there's a nice bench there. The rose garden is in his memory, and we have the Connor Auditorium named in his memory. And right inside the door is a very fine portrait of Terry. Anyhow, Terry will be honored this Friday with a memorial service. We all miss Terry a very great deal. Those who knew him will remember very keenly how he always had a big smile and his hand out to shake your hand. He greeted everybody. I think he knew half of Berks County, maybe 3/4 of Reading. Very gregarious, very friendly, very wonderful man, an attorney by profession, and a historical society person to the nth degree by choice. So this Friday in the afternoon will be the memorial service at Albright College in the chapel. And is it 2 o'clock?
I believe 2 o'clock.
I think it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We will be there, as will many people who are members of the Historical Society. I think it's open to the general public, and it'll be memorable. So that's this coming Friday. So that would be, today is the 6th.
Wednesday.
Yeah, it would be the 8th.
Be the 8th.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. 8th, the same date, 8/8/08. The same date as the 100th anniversary of the pagoda, and there will be some pagoda activity on that Friday as well, probably the better part of the day. So there'll be a celebration for the pagoda's 100th anniversary.
Ringo Band has a concert that day too, I believe.
Oh, really?
I think so.
Where?
I don't know. I remember somebody mentioning that.
Okay. Now, back to the... Where were we?
I think it's mine.
Yes.
For a tour.
Okay. I think there were. Can we get back to that Amityville picture again? And let me show you some of the people that were mentioned, if we can get that once more, if that's possible. While we're looking for that, I'm going to get. Are we okay? Okay. Amityville again. To give you an idea of the type of illustrations that accompany each of the stories, and each of the stories runs 4 to 5 pages, including the illustration. Up in the upper left-hand corner, we see the Amity Township School, which I think will probably be replaced in the very near future. That's in the upper left-hand corner. And to the immediate right of the school, we see Principal M.C. Billett. Will be remembered by many people because he served for a long time, and he left to the Historical Society his wonderful collection of school photographs. So we have quite a number of Billett's school photographs of the Amity area plus other areas. To the right of that gentleman peeking there is Charles S. Rhodes, the postmaster of Amityville. Now, Amityville, like many other rural towns, had a post office with a different name from the, the town's name itself, and it was Atoll, A-T-H-O-L. Some people remember that. For instance, Pleasantville was Manatawny Post Office. So there were a number of places that had a post office with a different name. Anyhow, that's Frank M. John, General Merchandise, Amityville, and Charles Rhodes was the postmaster inside. Now you're seeing there Victor Goodhart, first auctioneer at George Fry's 30-year-old Amityville sales. They used to have horses there frequently at that hotel, which, by the way, was torn down. There was a big fire there, and they sort of fooled around with the building for a couple of years, and finally it was torn down, sort of from the very center. Actually, it was down below sort of the school. Anyhow, the old hotel is gone, and there's just an empty lot there today, but that's where they used to have big horse and mule sales years back. Going over to the right-hand side, at the top layer of that picture, there we see John Rhodes, the former prothonotary, who's from Amityville, and that's an interior view. It shows there that there was probably a little balcony. The museum at Amityville was larger than a one-room schoolhouse building, and it was actually built for Sunday school purposes, for English, and I guess they had some services in there for a while. There was a little split in the congregation, those who wanted German, those who wanted English, and the English folks moved into this building. It was a rather sizable building. There are pictures of it at the Historical Society, and in some of your former issues. I think I have 2 photographs in various issues of the passing scene. By the way, when that finally closed down, and like so many little museums in towns, eventually when the key person who was the spark plug of the entity passes away, things just sort of come to an end. A number of those things came to the Historical Society. Some were to come to the Historical Society, but we can't find them, which makes me think that they didn't get there. Right. But that was the idea, that should that ever fail, the collection would come to the Historical Society, and some of those things did come to us. And then directly below, we see the fellow's hat, is Isaac Rhodes, the blacksmith in Amityville. And if we can go down a little bit lower and off to the left, there we are. We see Heaster Oxenford has soda fountain in his grocery store. That building still stands. Needless to say, the soda fountain isn't there anymore. I remember stopping in there for something to drink when we were working on the historical map of Berks County in 1976. So I know that it was sort of on its last legs when we were in there in 1976. Oh, and if you move a little bit to the left, you'll see half of that Amity Township Historical Museum. It was a sizable structure. As I said, it was larger than most one-room schoolhouses would be. And then going off again to the left, and you know that's almost in the right proportion because that little building was on the right-hand side of St. Paul's Church. And as old-timers know and postcard collectors know, a cyclone went through there and toppled the steeple of St. Paul's Church, and they helped to raise money to rebuild it by selling postcards. And virtually every postcard collector of Berks County things has a couple of pictures of St. Paul's Church, including the clock, the big clock lying on the ground, so that was rebuilt. And then to the left of that is a neat little building that has in recent times been restored. There was some talk of tearing it down, but thank goodness they didn't. And that's the Sunday school building. So what you're seeing there is what actually existed years ago. The Sunday school building is still there. As a matter of fact, every once in a while they'll have a wedding in there. And then you have St. Paul's, and we're looking up from like the general store position across the street to St. Paul's, and then on the right-hand side was that cute little museum. And going over again to the left, we see, good heavens, that was Tad's. Eli Ludwig was in charge of the museum. I had forgotten that. That's bringing it back to memory. Our former curator was related, it descends from Eli Ludwig.
And now trustee.
Yeah, and a trustee of our organization. Yeah, Eli Ludwig had a racetrack back in his property on his farm, which is, I guess, really part of more Weavertown than it is Amityville. And John Henry Van Reed is the gentleman on the left, and Constable Davy Matthias, with a very contemplative look, is on the right. He was the constable. I presume that he presented summons in a very genteel fashion, because I doubt whether he could really run down the street and nail someone who was a malcontent. Can we go to the next one for maybe Centerport? When I first became interested in local history, the old general store with the post office was still around, and it lists, there's a picture coming up of Postmaster Roy Rentschler and M.S. Rentschler, the store keeper. That old general store building still exists on the upper left-hand side, still exists in town, and I believe now it's an apartment house. It's been closed. And to the immediate right, we see the Centerport Grange. I remember giving a talk at the Centerport Grange quite a number of years ago, and it was a very interesting experience. To the immediate right, we see Dr. Max Eschenberg, St. Joseph's on the staff. Oh, there we are. Impressive building. And at St. Joseph's Hospital. And moving on to the right, we have Joseph Naftsinger. I mean, these are names that are familiar, I'm sure, to many people, myself included. And then we have Centerport School Building. That school building was the one that they used prior to the consolidated building, and which is close by. That building is now a home, still visible, still in the town itself. And if you go directly down below, on the right-hand side, we see Carl Reber, who was the school teacher in that Centerport School Building. And of course, in those days, the school was first grade to 8th grade. And then moving a little bit to the left, we have the Centerport Band, and they still have a Centerport Band. And we see the band members practice at home between times. And that's a little drawing of one of the fellows in the Centerport Bank. And moving over to the left, we have E.R. Bolthaser. That's a very common name in that general area. And then down below, we have a street scene in the southern end of town at a time when they used to bring the animals. Today, the Camel Hotel, I think that's sort of shown there on the left-hand side. There's a suggestion of a building at the stop sign. Oh, it's very interesting. I don't know whether it's still there, but the last time I went to Centerport, I thought it was really funny because right at that point, there's a fork in the road, and someone erected a giant fork.
Oh, yeah, sure. It's still there.
Is it still there?
Oh, yeah, it's still there.
I thought that was really interesting.
The fork in the road.
The fork in the road, yeah.
We need to have a picture of that.
That's the truth.
Has that... You mean to say that's been in the passing scene?
I think I mentioned it, but we've never...
We never had a picture. We need to get a picture of that.
We got to get a picture of the fork in the road. We really have to do that.
No spoon or giant napkin?
No, just fork in the road.
Anyhow, let me see what time I'm... Okay, I can say a few words about the introduction. What you have seen, those illustrations were done by Gensler. And I'm going to give you just a little bit of history on the series that's appearing in there, since it is covering actually 105 pages. It says, the The book starts in that section. It starts on page 100, actually, with an introduction to the section itself. It said, the foregoing introduction appeared on Wednesday, January the 11th, 1939. At that date, the Times, soon to become the sister newspaper to the Reading Eagle, was headquartered in the large building at the corner of 6th and Walnut that still stands today. I think they're selling furniture and bed clothing and that sort of thing. And then 2 years later, I go on to say that the Times merged with the Eagle and then went over to 4th and Court. This is my comment on the series itself. Why is it being used? Why are we devoting 105 pages to that series? For the record, the Towns and Villages articles originally appeared in random order. In this volume, they're run alphabetically for convenient referencing. From a historical's perspective, these 25 overviews in word and picture have considerable documentary value, as few histories were prepared and published during the Depression. There was nothing published during the Depression in Berks County. And by 1939, the world and life itself was about to change radically. Things would and could never be the same. Young men in the villages soon left the cozy familiarity and security of rural life to fight in foreign lands. Most who returned came back much altered. It's interesting to note that many places still had an 8-room, 1-room village schoolhouse, often taught by someone who would remain in memory for a lifetime. The illustrations and texts indicate that making and smoking cigars remained commonplace. Most mature men relished a good cigar or chewed tobacco. Notice, too, that the local general store merchant, hotel keeper, and so forth, played significant roles in the fabric of life as it existed 70 years ago. Everybody knew them. Finally, and this is of paramount significance, much that appears in these articles in word and sketch can be found absolutely nowhere else. Many who are watching this program will remember Leroy Gensler, who drew those illustrations. Leroy Gensler was, for most of his years, an artist for the Reading Eagle, but he did start out originally as an artist for the Reading Times. Leroy Gensler was born in 1915 in Lebanon, Pennsylvania. When the series began, he was about 24 years old. As the Times staff artist, he regularly prepared illustrations for features such as the week's news and pictures, and he would enhance columns by staff and guest writers. He had a gift for drawing people that resulted in cartoon-like creations that were readily recognizable as the people they represented. And you people who've been looking at the screen, and I'm sure that a number of you, many of you recognize some of the people that you saw, and you realize that his drawings looked like the people that they were to represent. Consequently, this section has considerable value historically, just from the photograph or the drawing standpoint. On the way to work on Tuesday morning, January the 13th, 1976, Gensler was fatally stricken at the rear of Washington Towers, 50 North 4th. He was taken to Community General Hospital, where he died at the age of 60. And this thing is interesting. The obituary in the Reading Eagle noted that Gensler had been the Eagle's cartoonist since 1953. These newspaper associates served as his pallbearers. These names are all familiar to me. Charlie Wilson, Al Norino, Jim Flippin, Chuck Gallagher, Dan Hoffman, and Eagle photographer Walt Romansky. And this I think is very interesting. Robert Baker Bamford, a name that most of you will remember. He was the writer who wrote the text for this section. He was born in 1903, the son of Melvin and Stella Bamford. The family residence was at 519 Walnut Street in Reading. Early on, his dad, M.W. Bamford, in partnership with L.S. Cramp, operated 2 drugstores at 124 North 5th and 446 Penn. Robert had a brother, James Bamford, a graduate of MIT, who in maturity became president of M.W. Bamford Incorporated, a drug manufacturing enterprise long situated above the family drugstore at 8 South 5th. Brother Jim will be remembered by many for his term as the mayor of the city of Reading from 1951 to 1955. Robert attended, and this is the writer, Robert attended MIT as well, and went on to serve as vice president of M.W. Bamford Incorporated. The Bamfords owned a farm in Byrne Township, along Rick Road, in the proximity of Epler's Church, up the hill from Linebox Hotel. They referred to it as Pook's Hill. It was here that Robert lived most of his life, and it was here that he died at the age of 90 in 1993. Burial was in Epler's Church. Robert's nephew and Mayor Bamford's son, Nicholas, of the Mountain area, recalls his uncle as a scholarly individual, an avid reader, and a frequent visitor to the Reading Public Library, which was a stone's throw from the Bamford drugstore on South 5th. As the accompanying pictures suggest, he devoted considerable time to operating his farm. Now, here's a fellow who attended MIT, very scholarly, and he preferred farming. When I telephoned Mr. Bamford in the 1960s in regard to the articles that follow, he stated that most installments were prepared during the winter of 1939 when farm maintenance was minimal. Younger readers will find Robert's writing colloquial in style, but not unlike some well-known columnists and journalists of the 1920s and 1930s. And while his punctuation goes on about some of his idiosyncrasies, all of which were very interesting. He married Gladys Redkay relatively late in life at the age of 56. There were no children. Robert was a devoted member of First Presbyterian Church in Reading. And I conclude the section by saying special thanks must be accorded to Sandy Stieff of Reading, who supplied the original newspaper columns, Irv Rathman of Wernersville, who ascertained publication dates and provided miscellaneous information relative to the series, and we want to thank Audrey Saint of Reading, who's a society receptionist who prepared quite a bit of the material for digital form. And of course we have to thank Nicholas Bamford, Mayor Bamford's son, living in Mountain, for relevant information in regard to his uncle who wrote the text. So that gives you a little bit of a background on what's going to be in volume 16, 105 pages of the 272. Let's shift gears, and Simon, I believe you have some things to tell us about the Four Centuries tour coming up.
I sure do, and you know, while as sad as I am to see the summer coming to an end, the fall here in Berks County can be just a beautiful time of the year. And with that said, the Historical Society of Berks County and our signature sponsor, the Reading Hospital and Medical Center, are pleased to announce this year's 4 Centuries in Berks Historic Property Tour. And there is a little bit of difference. Last year it was the 3 Centuries in Berks Historic Property Tour, but coming into the 21st century, we have a home from the 21st century on the tour, so we'll be able to explore the 4 centuries that we have. You know, today's news is tomorrow's history, and we feel it only right to represent that portion of the architectural legacy that we share here in Berks County, which is what we're doing. But the tour is going to be, again, like always, the first Saturday in October. This year it's Saturday, October 4th, and it'll be from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And this year's tour is going to be an area that hasn't been looked at for a long time. We're going to be discovering Western Berks, in particular Marion Township and rural Wilmsdorf. And we have some fantastic properties on this tour. You know, we do this tour because it allows the citizens of Berks County, Greater Reading, as well as our visitors and neighbors from outside the area to really witness the beautiful architectural historic legacy that we share here in Berks County. This year, the tour tickets, we haven't raised the price on them. The tour tickets, when purchased in advance, are $22. Okay, the day of the tour, they're going to be $25. They're going to be available at 7 different locations throughout the county. And when I show this, if you can get a close-up on that, I'll read you some of the areas, locations that we are going to be selling the tickets in addition to the, there we go, see if we can zoom out a little bit. We're going to be selling the tickets naturally at the Historical Society's main location, 940 Center Avenue, but we'll also be selling tickets at Green Valley Nurseries in Sinking Spring, Espen Shades Nursery in Fleetwood, Hopewell Nurseries in Boyertown, Boyer's Food Market in Womelsdorf, the Blue Spruce Market in Womelsdorf, as well as Weaver's Orchard in Morgantown. They will be, tickets will go on sale approximately the 2nd week of September, and they'll run through the day of tour. Again, the ticket prices are $22 purchased in advance, $25 the day of tour. But in addition to that, like for the other tours that we've had. We're also going to be having a bus, and our esteemed President George M. Miser over here is going to be the tour director on that bus. And so in addition to seeing all the beautiful properties, you're going to get a real overview of county history for Western Berks as you tour that particular area. And those tickets, it's going to be on a first-come, first-served basis. Seating is limited, approximately 40 seats on the bus, and those tickets will be $45. So, but they will go quick. But this year, it's unbelievable. In years past, you know, we've generally focused on about 3 contiguous townships within the county. Well, this year the properties are so dense, the historic properties are so dense in that particular area that we focused on Marion Township and Wummelsdorf, and we have 11 just exceptional properties. Just to whet your appetite, I'll tell you that Charming Forge, the beautiful limestone mansion, is going to be open to the public, and that is a private residence which
is not opened all that often.
Oh, well, you know, it's when we're talking open, it might be open once every, you know, 5 years. So this is really, you know, could be a once-in-a-lifetime experience to see this particular property. The current owner has restored it to its original magnificence. It's just filled with beautiful period antiques, and it really is something. In addition to that, we have the Charming Forge boarding house, and the history, and George can tell you more about the history on the Charming Forge iron works. But it's magnificent. Started, what, 1749?
It goes back to the days of Baron Stiegel, right. And the whole place has a wonderful history. That boarding house was where the workers lived who worked in the forge itself. When you enter, let's see, Charming Forge is listed as 1.9 miles north of Wummelsdorf. And as you go from Wummelsdorf into Charming Forge, you cross a bridge, which was originally a wooden bridge, I think until about 1939 when it was taken down. Mm-hmm. And the original Charming Forge, when you would cross the covered bridge, would lie directly on the right-hand side. Those of you who come to the Historical Society into our exhibition hall know that we have that wonderful painting that covers a whole wall of exhibition hall of Charming Forge. And the old forge is actually shown in that painting. I think they only ever took one picture of that, or one photograph, because you always see that same one photograph, that one view, and never any other view. But and there used to be a number of little small, I guess some of those are still standing, stone buildings where some of the workers lived, and where some of the upper management people lived. And right across from the side of Charming Forge Mansion was the office building. That's still there. Virtually all that was at Charming Forge pretty well survives. They took away 1 or 2 of some of those cabins that were built in more recent times, like 1900. But that was a very, very interesting section. The Union Canal, which was needed to transport the stoves, whatever, the Union Canal was located right behind there. So that whole area is really in rather pristine condition. And if you've never seen the interior of Charming Forge Mansion, you're in for a great big surprise. It's absolutely elegant.
You know, George, in addition to Charming Forge, we also have Christ Lutheran Church on the menu, which is the burial place for Regina Leininger. And we will have people talking about Regina and her harrowing experience in the captivity of Native Americans during the French and Indian War. So that's going to be, a very interesting location as well. In addition, we also
by the way, Governor Schultz was born in the parsonage right behind that church.
Is that right?
The big limestone home back there was the birthplace of who became governor of the state of Pennsylvania.
And also, in addition to the Christ Lutheran, we also have the Peter Spiker House, one of the early magistrates. Early magistrates in Berks County, and his home was the rallying point for many of the militia and the fighting forces that would gather to defend in the French and Indian War. So it really is magnificent. If I may, though, this tour would not happen were it not for the sponsors and the businesses around Berks County who care about the historical legacy of Berks County and want to make events like this possible. And I mentioned that the Reading Hospital and Medical Center, they are our signature sponsors for this event, but we also have a number of patron sponsors who have helped out and really make this tour as special as it is and allow us to do many other things that we otherwise would not be able to do. And I would like to recognize those, if I may. I'd like to start off by saying, in addition to the Reading Hospital and Medical Center, we are also very appreciative of Associated Construction, Berkshire Bank, Land Display, Malsney Tile, Masano Architects, Phoebe Burke's Village, the Reading Eagle Press, Reese Advertising, Security First, Vist Insurance, William G. Cuckin Association, and Associates rather, as well as Weidenhammer Systems. And like I said, those people, were it not for them, we couldn't do this tour, and we're very thankful to them for helping us provide this and make this available to the citizens of Berks County. So if you have any questions about the tour, you can give us a call at the Historical Society at 610-375-4375. You ask for me or Gloria or Janice Longlot or Josh, and we'll be able to get you all the information that you need. It's a wonderful time, and like I said, fall is a beautiful time of the year, and this is a great way to welcome in the fall season with this beautiful historic property tour. So hopefully you can all make it. If you haven't been on the tour, it's great. Drive on your own. It allows you to see properties in Berks County that you might have driven by in your travels through the county and said, boy, I'd really like to see what that home looks like on the inside. This gives you that opportunity, so please join us.
And that Spiker home is really a part of that's a very early Berks County property. It was built in 3 sections,
Right.
1730, 1740, and 1806.
Yeah.
And that 1730 part is fantastic.
Oh, yeah, we were lucky enough to-
Unbelievable. The front door there defies
it
description.
Does. It does.
It defies description. You have to see it.
And the kitchen. I mean, like I said,
Oh, the kitchen.
this is something not to be missed. This is really something.
Absolutely. By the way, and while we're acknowledging things, I feel incumbent upon me to mention that we are appreciative to the Highlands of Wyomissing for their ongoing patronage of this program that you're watching. As a matter of fact, it's sort of a joke. We refer to the Highlands as the Historical Society West because we have loads and loads of members who are at the Highlands, and we certainly appreciate their ongoing sponsorship both for this TV program and for our good members who are at the Highlands, who support us on an ongoing basis. So we're very appreciative to the Highlands and the people who live there. I wanted to get that in. Joshua, I think you have something for us.
Yes, I have a few things here. I wasn't sure if I was going to have enough time here, but plenty of time.
Go to it.
I think we'll start off on the ground and work our way up here. I brought along some neat things we've been finding in the attic. Just a couple of them here. We have something on the floor here. Hopefully we can get a good close-up of that somehow. This is somewhat of a mystery, even to our esteemed host, Mr. Miser here. This is a circa 1944 photo called, as you can see there, a little closer maybe. There we go.
Good.
The Four Kings of Harmony. Like I said, the photo's taken in 1944. Now, we do know the names of the 4 gentlemen, but don't ask me to point to which one's which. I'm afraid I don't know that. But we know who made up the quartet. Paul Kraut was the tenor. Al Holman was the lead singer. Arthur Leader was the bass, and Paul Butler, who donated this particular photograph here, Paul Butler was the baritone. If any reader at home knows something about the group, please call 378-0426 of the studio here, or if you happen to catch the show after the live viewing here, please call me at work 610-375-4375.
Yes, if you know which one is which,
I was going to ask.
Please give us a call.
Yeah,
but did Pam Harmon see this?
No, she didn't.
I wonder if, is it the same spelling? Is it the same?
It's the same spelling. Pam Harmon is one of our volunteers. We just found it the other day. I hadn't had a chance to ask her. I'll see her on Friday. I'll ask her.
We keep finding interesting things in the attic. What happened was when we closed the building in 1928 on 4th Street, things were carried and put in the attic, and some of those were still there until very, very recently. And little by little, we're going through and cataloging things.
We're finally at a point where I've been wanting to do this, and the members of the Historical Society magazine wanted to attack the attic because we're finding a lot of neat stuff up there, but we've had to wait. I thought if there's like a game, you arrange the numbers. You can only arrange one number at a time, and I finally had a chance to tear through stuff in the attic.
I'm sure some of your eyes are the first eyes that have been laid on them since they've been moved.
And the young eyes too.
I've never seen that. I've been a member for 49 years. I've never seen that picture.
But if anybody knows anything about the Four Kings of Harmony, please contact me. I'd love to know something about the group. I'm sure George would too for an upcoming article. Now the next thing over here on the easel, this is something we know a little bit more about. When the Berks County Prison closed at City Park, there was a number of proposals before they finally demolished the site and covered it over. But this was one of the preliminary sketches for
I've never seen that.
to use at City Park. We don't know who the artist is, unfortunately. We do know who donated it. It was donated by a lady named Mary Archer.
Mary Archer.
Yes.
Well, we know who Mary Archer is. Mary Archer was the woman who started the Animal Rescue League. Mary's house had oodles and oodles of puppy dogs over there at one time on River 724.
Okay. Well, on March 2nd of 1963, she brought this by to us about 45 years ago. So this is one of the preliminary sketches. I'm sure Mr. Miser can tell you the number of proposals what to do with the site, including one of the proposed sites for the Reading Public Museum.
Yeah.
I don't know what this particular proposal was
We're going to have a soldiers' memorial. There were all kinds of... the biggest push was for the museum, but Clint Schilling, Levi Mengel wanted nothing to do with having the museum in the old prison building. They closed the prison in 1932 and moved the prisoners over to the new prison in Burns Township on the Essex tract. When they finally, see, this was Depression time, and that period, 1932, 33, 34, that was the absolute pits of the Depression, and there was no money for renovation. So finally, little by little by little, the city workers began taking the thing down, so that by 1937, the building was leveled. By the way, if you were to dig down through the center of that parking lot with the police park their cars there today on that lot, if you were to go down through there, you would find that solitary confinement cells are still there underground with the bars on them. Everything, they just threw the dirt in and filled in and leveled over the top. So part of that old prison is still underground up in City Park.
And we still have one of those cells at the Historical Society.
That's right.
Wow.
So not only do we have actual artifacts from the prison itself, we also have a couple things, as you can see, related to what to do with the property after they raised the building down. A couple things here. Our next exhibit, as I mentioned before, our current exhibit right now is on the 175th anniversary of the Reading Company. That exhibit is due to close in January of 2009. Our next exhibit coming up is going to be Berks County, World War I and World War II on the home front here. We have a wonderful collection of posters here. Let's go for this camera right here. We have about 400 or 500. This one instead, okay. We have a wonderful collection of about 400 or 500 war, I guess you could say, war propaganda, war support posters for World War I and World War II with a variety of topics. And I love, this is one of the more interesting ones geared towards the younger population of the country at that time, urging little children to do their part. Eat no wheat cereals.
That is interesting.
Leave nothing on your plate.
That's interesting. Eat no, I've never seen that before. Eat no wheat cereals. And leave nothing on your plate. I
remember doing a mention, I'm going to make a reference to a previous exhibit here, Beer and Pretzels, that one of the seeds for Prohibition was actually, could have been in World War I, where they had a wheat blight and also they had a very short supply of wheat. So again, the example, eat no wheat cereal, eat your cornmeal, oatmeal, cornflakes. So, Little American, do your part. This is a neat little comparison, too. We're also going to be talking about the World War I versus World War II efforts on a variety of topics, rationing, food, what have you. So this is a good comparison, World War I versus II. This is the World War II effort for all, this one here as well, okay? 3 square meals a day. And I don't know how this fits in with the food progression pyramid, but as you can see, I'll hold this up here, you can see a little bit of it right here. This is a 7 food group circle down here. This is long before the food pyramid, I suppose, right by my right thumb there. Talk about equal amounts of food there, long before the food pyramid, and God knows what they use. God knows what they use today. But we have just a wonderful selection of posters. I'll show you one more here before a little.
Yeah, that's good.
Show you more about
that one is very interesting about eat no wheat. That is very interesting.
And I'm sure,
I had forgotten about that.
I'm not sure I grasp the context on that.
So apparently, I guess the bread was needed for the war effort.
Well, yeah, or something. I mean, wheat was used in, more than, I don't know. Yeah, I'd like to find a little bit more about that.
Ersatz bread and sawdust.
That's right.
This is another neat one, again, geared towards...
Here, let me help you.
Oh, thank you, son. This is another World War II era poster. This
is neat.
would have been used in schools. The amount of kids raised in schools, they could easily see what their money provided. This is for a Jeep. They would have certain money raised for a hood of a Jeep, an instrument panel, even a steering wheel, tires and wheels. Of course, they had a rubber ration. One of the displays we're going to have in the exhibit is a gas station talking about gas rationing and also rubber rationing, how we're going to have an example of a tire that was patched many, many times because you couldn't afford, you couldn't even find, in some cases, a rubber tire to use for your car. So there's numerous patched tires.
The younger people forget how difficult cars were to get. Well, they weren't making any during the height of the war. And I can remember very well, someone passed away in the neighborhood. There were 4 people in the front porch waiting to buy their car.
Well, you know, it's going to really show the juxtaposition between the war effort then and what we face now.
Certainly.
I mean, it's totally
different.
It was a daily aspect. You couldn't get away from it. You couldn't turn off the TV and get away from it. It was a daily aspect. You had victory gardens. We planned to have a wheelbarrow that someone used to collect horse manure. They would have collected the manure here in the city, then brought it all the way up, believe it or not, to the top of Skyline Drive where they had victory gardens. Little kids collected milkweed pods to use for the inflatable, for the life vests. Not many people. We haven't been able to find any photos, so if anybody knows of any photos, Reading apparently was a big supply depot for cork. Apparently one of the biggest supplies in the country. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to find any photos of the cork yards. A lot of kids remember going up there and playing amongst the cork. But start collecting your tin cans and milkweed pods.
And it was also, so many of the parachute factories were, you know, and
Minix, the old places that made gloves, but they were all refitted for the war effort.
We'll be talking about the local companies that produce material for the war effort. We have I just found it, I thought we had one, but I wasn't sure. I just found it the other day. We have an E flag, which was awarded by the government to local industries, or industries throughout the country. But it was an E flag. It was given for extraordinary effort to produce material for the war. We have an E flag from a Fleetwood business, so it's amazing the contribution. Battery companies in Hamburg made batteries. We have the Armor Cast building down in Birdsboro, which was built just for the World War II, then later expanded for the Korean War. So it's going to be an all-encompassing exhibit, and I'm just so happy to get our posters out to the public because the artwork in the posters, especially with the World War I posters, is amazing. One of my favorite posters, and I'm sure it's going to be a prominent display in the exhibit, is a World War I poster. It shows the skyline of New York City on fire with a decapitated Statue of Liberty in front of it. You can plainly see the head of the Statue of Liberty lying in New York Harbor. The summation of the poster is basically, do your part or this could happen. Sort of, I don't know if they ever sued the Planet of the Apes movie for rights or copyright infringement, but it's an amazing poster.
But the Historical Society also has, I don't believe it, we've never mounted an exhibit featuring these posters, have we?
Not that I know of.
So this is another example of the first time that this is going to be seen.
And a lot of these posters, they were just been inventoried in the past couple of years. It's an amazing amount of posters we have. And the variety of posters we have too, we used a lot of common designs, especially World War I. Some of the artists were well known for their covers for Saturday Evening Post, Harper's Weekly. The artwork is just absolutely amazing. There'll be a treat to look at visually, if nothing else. But it's just going to be a wonderful exhibit.
You mentioned the Victory Gardens. A lot of people dug up their backyards, their grass backyards, and had the Victory Garden out back. We did that. We
plan to have a Victory Garden display in the exhibit. I'm trying to figure out how to do museum quality dirt so we don't invite any more pests into the Historical Society.
Josh's guest curator for this is one of our trustees, Paul Troutman, and Paul always is very enthusiastic about it. And so if it can be done, Paul can have Paul and Josh will get it done.
But this is going to be, I think, Paul's about third or fourth exhibit at the Historical Society, and we are very appreciative of his help. And he's drumming up a lot of support, a lot of objects that I hadn't even thought of. We're going to have a working with a part of our gas station exhibit, the bell. I don't think any gas stations around here have it now, but when you come up to the gas station, you hit a pneumatic hose, hit the bell.
They all had that.
So the parents of the young kids will have fun jumping on top of the bell and annoying their parents.
So he has one of those, doesn't he?
He's working on one. We have a lead on one.
Pete's gas station in Glenside. I remember my folks, driving over there.
But we're back to public transportation, how gas rationing and tire rationing prolonged the life of the trolleys in the area. We're going to have a number of some trolley memorabilia coming in, so it's look for some more TV shows here. We'll talk about it more further, but it's just going to be a very interesting exhibit.
I'm sure it will be. Do we have, rather than go to the slides, do you have any of those pictures that will be appearing?
I think we're down to
We're down to 2 minutes, all right.
2 minutes here.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. In the new book will be, in one of the other passing scene books, we had some material on Jack Luden, who was the nephew of Bill Luden, the cough drop king of Reading. Anyhow, Jack Luden grew up in North 5th Street between Windsor and Spring, and he went to 5th and Spring School. He went to Hollywood, he appeared in 70 films, and for Columbia Pictures in the late 1930s, about the time of these articles that are going to be in the next passing scene book, he made 4 films that featured Tuffy, the Wonder Dog. He's shaking paws there with Tuffy. Tuffy knew more tricks than any other animal who ever appeared in a film. I think he had something like 400 tricks that he could do just with a verbal command. Anyhow, that's Jack Luden, very, very handsome. When he used to come back to Reading in his great big convertibles, all the ladies used to go gaga because he was a very handsome fellow. And as I said, did appear in 70 Hollywood films, the last one into the 1940s. Most of his films were made early on. He was a leading man in the late days of silent films, early days of sound, and but he was very successful as a cowboy. He really could ride a horse extremely well, and as you can see there, rather handsome as a leading man in the cowboy films. But his interplay with Tuffy is incredible. He made 4 films for Columbia with Tuffy. The Historical Society owns those 4 films. Okay, you read in the newspaper today about the 161 Clymer Street caught on fire yesterday. That Georgian Revival building is in the condition you now see it. I took that yesterday about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and unfortunately I don't think it's going to be restored. The damage there is very significant. There was a previous fire in '79, and they did rebuild it. I don't think it'll happen again. And tell your friends about our show, which is on live the first Wednesday of each month at 7. Thanks to program participants, Joshua K. Blay, to my Simon B. Bertlett.
Thank you, George.
You're welcome. I'm George M. Miser, President of the Historical Society for the last decade. We look forward to having you join us again on September the 3rd at 7 o'clock. Thanks for watching. So long.
The Historical Society on BCTV is supported in part by the Highlands at Wyomissing.